What's up, y'all? Welcome to the OCast, episode 5. We are live on air. It was kind of cool when that fade in your face was like right in the center of the O. I don't know.
I got lucky this time.
Yes, you're always lucky when you're with the O. All right. So before we actually get started, we're talking about hardship today. How to overcome hardship, specifically as a musician. We all know how hard it is to be a musician and how competitive and impossible and saturated it is, right?
He said so very sarcastically, of course.
Yeah. Well, thanks for explaining my joke so you like made it less funny. But
I thought I made it more funny.
Okay,
I was just rolling with you.
see, this is why I love like being in the moment, because I always think of like some weird thing to say and it's like, I don't know, whatever. All right, next thing. So what I want to start off with is talking a little bit about some of the other content we have coming out here. We're right in the middle of the Record Hotness VIP Jam. If you haven't seen any of these videos, you guys have to check this out. The mix quality is off the chain. We got this man over here playing some of the gnarliest bass lines.
It was a really hot jam session. It was.
Yeah.
We had some great guys in the mix.
Yeah, we had two really excellent drummers, and on the third Record Hotness, which one? That was the piano solo. It's called Rising Sea Levels. And Steve does this, he ended up losing a stick somewhere in the middle of the song. And he does this like one-handed drum solo. It's absolutely incredible. You got to check it out. And then this week we have the last episode of Record Hotness coming out. So go watch those videos, go like it and comment on it and share it with all your friends and let them know where the most cutting-edge, wacky, crazy, improvised music is coming from. All right, this is right up there with Reggie Watts and Beardy Man and Mark Rebelay, all of that kind of stuff. If you guys are into any of those geniuses, so what else we got coming up? We got another jam coming up, which we might as well announce here. The next jam is going to be for Halloween.
The Rock Bottom Jam.
Rock Bottom VIP Jam. And so the theme is kind of along the lines of what we're talking about today on the show, in the sense of like hardship, coming down on hard times, and sometimes you need a support system. And that's kind of what the jams are for, right? I mean, we want to bring guys together.
It's for networking purposes so that we can strengthen the community that we are building.
Yeah, because like
a working community.
Because for me, like I was saying before, I could do videos all day long by myself, but it's just so much more fun when you have a team of people that are all like allied to the same kind of idea. And so I don't know if the jam session thing is going to be like the very best content of all time, but it's a lot of fun to make, and hopefully it's fun to watch. And so we'll have some more jams coming out around probably November. And we also have 2 super big, awesome, special, like big projects coming out as well. Those I'm going to leave a little bit in the dark.
Leave it vague for now. Leave it vague.
But anyway, this is the OCast. My name is Owen Adams.
And I am Connor McTighe.
All right, so let's get our little outline up over here and figure out what we're talking about. Do you want to go ahead and give us a little intro?
All right, so I always like to start with the Bible babble. So the story that we're going to be relating everything to is the story of Ehud from Judges. Now, at this point in time, this is after the Israelites have made it past Exodus and all the other stuff. They've gotten themselves established. They are outside of Egypt at this point in time. And they ended up coming under the rule of a very oppressive king named Eglon. So all of the Israelites had come under a very great hardship. Eglon was demanding more taxes of all of the townspeople, and every time that they gave him those taxes, he would demand even more the next go around. It was the kind of thing that was starving and killing their own people. So collectively, they prayed to be saved from this awful hardship that they were encountering. And God sent them a sort of little bail you out savior with a young man named Ehud. Ehud grew up in all the same hardships that the Israelites were facing, and he was fed up with it too. So he decided to essentially forge his own tiny short sword. He came to the king's chambers, told him that he had a very private, very special message to deliver to him. Ehud dismissed all of his servants and all of his hands.
Oh, he had a special message, all right.
As soon as the doors were locked behind him, Ehud said to him, "I have a secret message to you from God." And then he stabbed him and killed him. But it's really not about all the gory stuff. It's really around the main central focus, which was that the Israelites collectively prayed to change their situation. And in the biblical sense, it happened very abruptly. But in the musical sense, it happens over time through building your community. It doesn't happen in one fell swoop unless you have some great collaboration project where everybody gets taken care of afterwards. But regardless, the concept is still the same.
So, like, what's the moral of that story then? Like, what are we as musicians supposed to get out of this? Because, like, one of the things I noticed is, like, different sources doing research on this, you'll find that people say that, you know, the Israelites had done something that made God see them as unfavorable. And so the king was put there by God. And then, of course, he sent Ehud to go take care of the king, to, I guess, like, to put it back the way it was before. So, like, what do we get out of that? Like, because we you know, I would say pray to God, but we don't have somebody that's going to send, like, an assassin on our behalf to go,
of course not,
stab our enemies for us.
But
so
what
how can we actually apply that lesson?
The way that I would like to interpret that, anyhow, is that the strength in the community is really based on a collective hope. So if you're like you were saying, the best way to go about something and the most fun way, especially when we're talking about the jams that we have upcoming and everything like that, really comes from us having a general sense of hope with the teammates, the other musicians that we're working with. So while you have your own projects, I have my own projects, we have our own collaborative projects, and the other musicians that we work with have their own things and collaborative stuff with us. When we all get together and discuss and meld and jam together and begin new collaborative projects, it's really all because we have a genuine sense of hope that resonates throughout the community that we built through the networking process.
Yeah, I mean, you would like to think that every single project that you do is a success and it's going to, like, get you discovered and it's going to, like, turn into something really big. Like, I guess everybody kind of thinks that, but, like, one thing about the D.M.V. is there's so many little, like, fragmented scenes and so many little things going on that I think a lot of musicians around here just get kind of lost in the fray of playing with 50 different bands and, you know, 9 gigs a week and all this kind of stuff. And what we should be doing is figuring out how to centralize and how to come together and how to do something that represents everybody on the whole, rather than, okay, here's, you know, this is for this type of artist and this is for this type of musician. I think like what the goal is with the jam sessions is to just see what happens when we take all of these different people from all different skill levels and age levels and walks of life, all different types of people, and to see what happens when they all come together. And, you know, it's a lot of garbage. Like, when you're first getting started, you're getting set up and, you know, you're getting used to the room and the mix and all that. But what's really amazing to see is over time, when folks get used to the how the drummer does grooves, and okay, he's a little early when he comes out of
Right.
fill or whatever, and then everybody sort of gets on the same page, and then these really special moments start to happen once everybody sort of lets go and lets it happen. So when they're all tuned in on that same frequency, that's when really great stuff happens. That's when you have a chance for something to become
That's
really
in that
big.
collaborative fashion.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that I will say is I have seen it happen especially even in the local Bowie scene. I kind of in my early 20s, it did kind of become a trend where the same 5 groups were playing at the same 5 venues all the time. They were doing well. They were making like decent money. Maybe only one of them ended up breaking out of just that local scene for a little while. But the community that was built in that niche market was very nice. Everybody always had a gig. So I guess the grander scheme of things is really once you build that community, to try to expand upon it once you have that foundation.
Yeah, because as soon as people start breaking apart and doing different things, having different goals, and this is bad enough when it happens within a band, but then you talk about several bands inside of a community, and then people start getting competitive with each other, and it is the most ridiculous thing you can do, because you're taking your whole like support system, your whole team, and you're just like looking at them like, oh, which one of them is gonna like screw me over? It's like
Right.
if people work together and really like became united on a front, just like we're talking about with the Israelites. It wasn't one guy that decided, oh, I'm gonna go, have it out with the king over here.
It was one guy that ended up being the manifestation of everybody kind of collectively wanting somebody to take the reins and, take down this oppressor.
So there's a collective desire, right? And so like when we talk about hardship, one of the common like things that you'll hear in this story is the idea of crying out for help and crying out in prayer or what have you. And
which that story is from the book of Judges, and that is a very common theme. Almost all of the different subsections of the books of Judges involve stories of all of the Israelites collectively crying out for some sort of a little help, a little bit of a bailout.
They needed all kinds of help, right?
Right.
If you read through that whole section of the Bible, and so that crying out, I think, is what is like the very first thing that has to happen. And in the D.M.V music scene, like we definitely need a lot of help out here, because there's this sort of like we already talked about the fragmenting and the competitiveness of different groups and different musicians,
and there's a lot of it,
right? But there's also a level of elitism that happens. Okay, it's this sophistic sense of like, oh, I'm only going to work with this person or that person, and oh, I'm only going to work with people that have this type of equipment or this type of gear. Or, oh, you're doing a jam in your basement studio. It's like, oh, that's sacrilegious or something.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes it seems like there's an age miscommunication. Sometimes you can work with old cats who never want to work with young cats because they're afraid they just haven't been around the block enough. And then sometimes you have up-and-coming young cats who never want to work with the old cats because... I'm doing my own thing. Why would I want to do the old thing? This guy's this age. Why would I be taking advice from him? Why would I be listening to him?
At the end of the day, all that is just discrimination.
You're
just closing
on both
doors.
Ends, whether you're discriminating against the younger guy or the older guy, one way or another, you're limiting your resources.
That's exactly correct. And like, I will play with literally anybody. I've played with people from all kind of different walks of life. Now, I'm not going to...
If you watch the jam footage, you can clearly see that.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily going to, like, hang my hat on somebody that's, less experienced, but I'm not going to just shut them down right out of the gate. So part of having that sense of collectivism, for lack of a better term, Part of that is just leaving your doors open and not being like, just exclusive to people. Okay, like there's a guy. Ron was telling me a story about this guy that he had, who was an engineer that came into his studio, and he was like, "Oh yeah, man, I just bought this new microphone," and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, that's a guitar mic." Blah blah blah. He's just like acting like he's like this big dude, and it's like you're not really a big dude.
First off, you're not in your studio,
Yeah, right.
so why are you speaking to me like this?
Yeah,
It's
it
like
kind of
ruins the dynamic when really you're trying to build a some sort of collaborative relationship with this person.
Well, you don't know that I don't have, vintage Telefunken mics in a chest somewhere.
Right.
You don't know that I got a Sony
Yeah, I use a
C200.
guitar mic for this because I mix it this different way that I haven't heard anybody else use before.
Yeah,
but you wouldn't know because you didn't listen to my finished product. Yeah. You just told me that I had the wrong microphone.
Yeah, like how about learn something and listen and stop trying to be like a judgy Jenny. And just like keep your horizons open. And if you're gonna educate somebody about microphones and be like, okay, that's not the best application for that, there's a way to do that without making people uncomfortable and without adding that sort of negativity and that pressure and friction that doesn't need to be there. So that's one thing, and you can apply that to any other point in your life. There's a lot of situations as musicians encountering people of different skill levels where you feel like, oh, haha, I've been there before, and I've done that before.
Right.
But as soon as you start to give that sort of negativity off, what's going to happen is it's going to come back to bite you 10 times worse anyway. So it's interesting to see guys who are like, probably have no social media presence, probably don't even create content on their own. There's some but
they have some very strong opinions on how you should do it.
Yeah, there's some coffee runner in some major studio, and they think because they watched some big mix engineer do something, and because they went out and bought them a pack of cigarettes, that now they're the next big guy. It's like have a little bit of humility. And where this has taken me is this. You can still be an individual and like don't depend entirely on your scene or your collective. There's always like this story that comes to mind of the kids in elementary school. They get assigned a group project, and inevitably one or two people end up doing all the work in the project,
right?
And then everybody takes credit, like, oh yeah, I contributed equally. So that will happen. There will be people that just don't pull their weight. And the question is, like, what is that worth? Like, are they contributing anything that's valid? Are they still unified with your vision? Are they still being a professional? Are they still coming on time? Are they still coming
just
prepared?
Because they did less doesn't mean they did nothing.
Right. Like, everybody's afraid to get into social media. It's like the most terrifying thing for people.
Fear has been a big topic that we've discussed before.
Yeah, it's like horrifying. It's like a bad dream, like some kind of nightmare that's just gonna come to light, and like, oh, all my skeletons are gonna be found out. So
you got to get pretty famous before that happens.
So, but rather than being afraid of that, and rather than like retreating into your team or into your band, because another issue we've talked about is in bands. Reinforcing toxic, incorrect, negative beliefs that are limiting beliefs that are limiting you as well.
Yeah.
So there comes a point where you have to be the Ehud and go out from the group and take one for the team.
Thrust.
You have to take one for the team. You have to wear your heart on your sleeve and just go out and do what needs to be done and do what's right. But I don't know. Speak on that a little bit. Tell us something about, because you're a guy that does that a lot. I know in groups that we've played in together before, we had that conversation tons of times about how guys don't pull their weight as much as you were doing. So speak on that a little bit, because I think you're
right. Well, okay,
you've done that so many times.
I mean, I have done that, and I've also been the guy who has not pulled their weight as well.
Of course.
It's one of those things where I've been on both sides of it. If you're the guy who is right there carrying all the gear, and you're also the guy who's talking to the person who owns the venue, because maybe you got the gig at the venue, and you are playing in the show and you wrote songs for that show and everything like that. It's like, well, you've got like 10 different points of contact that you've put in a lot of time and effort in order to make everything go off without a hitch. And if you see somebody who is doing a very small fraction of what you're doing, it's annoying. And if you are also in a group where it's easy to get comfortable in a group to the point where you're like, okay, well, this thing runs like clockwork, so I can screw off. And then you screw off, and it turns out you're the guy who's not pulling their weight. So it's awful from both ends. Because if you're the guy who is screwing off, you kind of do know that you're doing it when you're doing it. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, when it comes down to those fundamentals, is always make sure that you have a decent work ethic. And if you have a decent work ethic and you're in a musical collective and you're working with other musicians, eventually the ones who don't have a good work ethic will weed themselves out.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically, though, since we are talking about Ehud, some of the things that you did when you would consider you were pulling most of the weight. I thought that would be really interesting for you to talk about to the folks. What are some of those things that you did? Because
this was not okay. So
this was even mind-boggling to me. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how do you do that? And I was asking you for advice. So, like, what are some of those things in terms of social media, in terms of establishing rapport with venues or audience members?
Well, going to the venues you plan on playing at, that's always a big number one. As far as
so before you actually get the gig, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Because if you're going to be approaching somebody who owns a venue so that your group can play there, you don't want the owner of the venue to think that you want to play at their venue just because you want somewhere to play. You really want them to believe that you want to play there because you want to play at their venue specifically, not just any venue. We like your venue. We would love to play here. What do we have to do to play for you here at your venue?
Yeah, we don't like.
You have to endear your employer.
We don't just want you guys to give us a platform to do our like crappy cover songs.
Otherwise, we'd be playing on the street by the subway or something like that.
Like you have to actually want to participate with what that venue is doing and enjoy and make that known that you want to be a part of that outside of any kind of business matters.
It's personalizing it's personalizing the relationship that you have with your venue owner. And you can utilize a similar tactic when you're on social media, because that was the other thing that you brought up.
But before we get to that specifically, though, like what are some things you say to the venue owner? Like let's get down into the weeds here, because people need to really hear this. Because when you first told me this, I was like shocked and blown away. Like, you actually do that? So like specifically, what do you say to the guy? What do you do? Like, how do you act around them? Like, do you I'm sure you bring usually your friends in, you tip well.
No, like well, yes, all of those things are included, but they are it's a very fluid thing. I've been able to go into a venue by myself.
It's fluid for you. Some of the guys watching this, it might not be so natural for them.
If you're a performer, then you're going to have to get fluid. You're going to have to be able to talk to people, because the more you play out in public, the more people you're going to have to talk to. That's just an inevitability. But the one thing that I've been able to do before is you kind of have to work a room. So you go into a venue that you've heard that live acts play there. Perhaps you know another musician who's played there and you would like to play there too. They're the similar style of music as you. So it would be easy for you to get in there and you would fit with their motif, you'd fit with their crowd. So you know that the venue is going to love you if you have good music to put out. So you just kind of start laying the groundwork by going to that place, perhaps on a night where they have some lower level acoustic music, nothing too loud, nothing where you would have to be screaming at your bartender about the facts about your band. Just a night where you could go in and kind of feel around, mingle a little bit with the crowd, possibly talk to the musician who's playing that night. And you just kind of pick up little bits of information.
And so maybe like, what are some techniques you would use if you want to play at that venue? You've established rapport, you've hung out with them, you've gone to the open mic night and all that. Like,
When
what do
you
you say to the venue owner? How do you even get to the owner?
Once you getting to the owner is usually pretty easy. A lot of times, owners of venues and people who do the music management and stuff like that, they like to show up for their events to make sure that everything is running smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So usually you can ask somebody in a large enough room, like, who's the guy who's kind of running this event? Who's the guy who set all this up? And once you find that guy, I think it's kind of rude to instantly go up to that person and start pushing your material on them.
Sure.
Nobody likes that.
Well, that's why it's such a tricky thing to do,
it's not
because
tricky.
you don't want to be pushy and you don't want to embarrass
That's the
yourself.
problem, though.
So
It's really not tricky. I feel like people just don't think of the simple solution. The simple solution is when you find the guy that you need to talk to, the first thing you need to do once you meet that person is start asking them questions. They don't know who you are, and you don't know who they are.
right.
So you should be asking them questions.
Well, when you ask
the
people
fact-
questions, it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like you're interested in what they have
in
to
any
say.
in any relationship, it has to be a 50-50 takeaway between somebody being interesting and interested.
Yep.
So if you are a musician and you believe that you and your material and the music that you're making is interesting, you've got that 50% down. The next thing you need to do to play in that venue that you want to play at is be interested in that venue, in their scene, in their patrons. And as long as you have that 50-50 evenly, then usually somebody is going to take notice.
And so when's the right time to actually get to sealing the deal of the gig and the logistics? Because that's one thing a lot of guys are terrible at, is they'll get a yes from the venue owner. Sure, we'll book you on Saturday. And then you have no logistics. You haven't talked about time. You haven't talked about load in, check, sound check.
You start laying all of the groundwork when you show up at whoever that guy is who's running the event. You have to make sure that you show up at one of their other performances that they set up that has nothing to do with you, and support it. I don't know you guys. I don't know the artist who was playing tonight, but I came out to support it because it seemed like it was right in my wheelhouse. And how are you doing it? Do you guys do it this way? Do you guys do it that way? How often do you guys do this?
So you're actually working ahead of the game, because you're sort of thinking about and
you're planning your
the,
own set while you're asking them questions.
Yeah, so you're working
so if I
the
ever played here,
logistics
this
out.
is how I would do it, because this is how it's supposed to be done here.
That
So
makes
you-
so much sense.
So
Yeah.
you already have a game. By the time you're done with that conversation, you already have a game plan for how you would perform at that venue, how you would set up. You might even know what door you would be bringing in your equipment through and stuff like that. You pay attention to little things like that. If you know all of that stuff, once the guy that you are talking to who runs the event knows that you know all of that stuff, then they will be way more willing to roll the dice on you, because at the end of the day, they're rolling the dice on you because they've never seen you perform live before. The only thing that you can hope is that you have things like content. If you have a recorded demo, or if you have this was our last live performance, and if you ask them enough questions, eventually, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to ask you a few questions too.
Yeah,
And
and
as
I
long-
think they would be much more likely to watch your video on their phone rather than spending money for a cover charge and coming out to one of your actual shows. So if you're like one of these bands that plays 10,000
You
gigs a
can't-
week but never
Right.
records any video, never has any content coming out, like, you're going to miss out on gigs anyway. Like, it amazes me.
Be happy if a stranger shows up to one of your shows based off of a brand new recommendation, but don't hold your breath for it. It rarely happens. It rarely happens if you don't already have a very large following.
Yeah, and so to me it sounds like, again, you're bringing people into your collective, and
Yep.
so you don't want to go to these higher up guys and be like, oh, how do we get in here? How do we do this? You're not trying to get into their thing. You want to befriend them and bring them into your circle,
Right.
and make it part of this collective, part of this sort of unified front, and part of your scene. And if you approach it that way, people are going to gravitate towards you rather than thinking that you're like creepy and trying to get something out of them and trying to manipulate them. Because
at the end of the day, everybody is trying to get something. Like, that's the end game is for you. Like, you're doing the dance.
And it sounds like you're sort of giving more initially than you're even expecting to get back in return. So by asking them the questions, by being interested, by spending money in the restaurant, by tipping well, by bringing your friends in and creating a good atmosphere, you're actually adding value to that venue.
Absolutely.
And then when you ask them about playing there, they're going to be like, well, of course. Why didn't you tell me before you had a band?
If you walked in as a musician trying to get a gig at a venue and you stayed at the venue for 3 hours scoping the joint out, but you ordered a water and sat in the back like a wallflower and didn't talk to anybody all night, yeah, you studied how they do things in that venue, but you made no connections. The venue doesn't know if the crowd that you are going to bring in, if they're going to be good. If on the other hand, if you come in there, you mingle with the staff, you mingle with their regular patrons, the people who always come to their music events and stuff like that, which usually it's a crowd of the same people, especially at places that are local, like the Old Bowie Town Grill, Monty's, things like that, that are in our local area. If you mingle with the staff, mingle with the patrons, maybe BS a little bit with the musicians and do all that, then everybody has kind of seen your face. You've gotten your name out there. They haven't heard you yet, but you've said that you played, and if they like you enough, they'll even if they've never heard you play, they'll be like, "Oh, so are you going to let that guy play here? I'm kind of interested to see how he said his group sounded like this. Well, we're going to have him here one night. You know what? I'll be here that night. I kind of want to see if they're good or not." And that's a great way to open up doors for yourself. And that's on a very small scale. Like, this is not the kind of thing where you'd be getting gigs at Sonar and Downstage and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there's a different approach for that, but I think that you got to start
for
somewhere.
A local bar scene. That is absolutely the way to do it.
And a lot of people that are probably watching this haven't even done what you've done and gotten as far as that.
You can get to a point where good local bars, if you're in a 4-piece band or something like that, you can play for 3 hours and get $400
and get some content out of it as well.
And get some content. You can have somebody taking video at your show. You and the other 3 guys that you just played on stage with each collect $100 out of a check that the bar pays you, and if you did well and the crowd was good and everybody was tipping that night, they want you back next month. So that's another guaranteed $400 for next month. You have 3 other bars that are on board with that, well, then you've got 4 gigs a month that is making each individual musician $400 for that month. And they can all have regular jobs and only play those 4 Saturdays and kick it.
Yeah, and of course this is assuming that you actually have a good show and you actually sound good on stage.
If you can play a good show for 3 hours, then you can get a nice little market for yourself.
And so, yeah, it sounds to me like just be fun and have a good time. Add value. We always talk about adding value. This is, again, I never made up any of this stuff. This comes from Gary Vaynerchuk. This comes from the millionaire guys that I know. This comes from smart, brilliant, genius millionaire guys. And this is what they use as their strategy. They don't expect something up front. They take a risk and add value, and then over time, people will add that value will come back for you. Just like we talked about a second ago with negativity. Negativity, you put it out, it'll come back for you as well. But just on the last tip on that, just for somebody that has never done this before, because again, this is natural for you. For somebody that's never done this before, what's one specific baby level easy thing that they can do when they go to that venue? What can they do to just get their feet wet, where they're not like booking the gig, but what can they do to get comfortable, get out of their shell, get out of their comfort zone a little bit?
Play an open mic and stay the entire evening and watch every single act that plays at that particular open mic night.
That's perfect. That's it. I got nothing else to add to that. That's a great way to do it. Everybody starts from doing a show. You're not paid. You're just getting the experience. And even if you fail, we've talked about failure, even if you're terrible, you will get so much data from that and so much experience from that it will be an invaluable memory to add to.
I've seen guys who are good. Like I've seen them play a song on a guitar at a party or something like that, but they've never really played an open mic night before. So they don't know anything about what it's like when they plug their acoustic guitar into an amplifier, and then how to make the volume work out right with the microphone volume, because maybe they're not a very loud singer. So if their guitar is plugged in, they start playing, they start singing, but they have a soft voice, and their voice gets drowned out by the guitar. Or vice versa. They have a really loud voice, and they end up over-singing over their guitar because they're a singer-songwriter who has an acoustic set. They've never done it before, but they're not going to learn that stuff until they actually play that first open mic. They might see somebody else who also has like an acoustic. I'm just using the acoustic shtick as an example. They might see somebody else who has a similar shtick to theirs, but they sound much more well-rounded. Only
And that's
because
how you learn.
they're equalized a little bit better. But the only way you're going to know how to equalize is if you're actually in the moment and doing it.
Yeah, you have to get all of your like, guitar cable.
The more pieces you add, yeah,
You got to get all that out of your system when the stakes are low, and don't end up creating a big mess like the guy we talked. I almost said his name. Wow, like the guy we talked about previously, who had this huge event and he wanted to show off his brilliant musical genius, and he was inexperienced and ended up making a huge fool of himself. Now he learned from that, I'm sure, but
you
do
wouldn't know
that.
because you didn't work with him again.
Do that at your open mic night. Do that when the stakes are low, and yeah,
You cannot make or break your career at an open mic night.
no. So like just be like Connor, and actually like
Not in
meet
a lot of
people.
other ways. Don't be like me in every way.
Well, I was
Trust
gonna
me.
say, like, actually meet people because you're interested in them and you want to meet them. Don't think every little thing you do is for the purpose of getting a gig or getting paid or getting money. That's a huge,
even if you're
huge
a really
fallacy.
even if you're a really awkward person, like I swear to you,
Just
and
own that. Just be awkward and just be.
Yeah,
That's what
you
I
can
am.
be
I'm an
awkward,
dude.
You can be awkward openly. You can. It's so weird. because
What's up? I'm Fred. I'm a little awkward. Nice to meet you.
You can say stuff like that.
That's a great pickup
especially,
line.
especially, well, in an artist community.
I've seen dudes pick
in an
up
artist
women with
community,
lines like that. Seriously.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not going to go ahead and advocate for that as far as the dating world goes. But we're not talking about the dating world. But
just as far as getting out of your shell.
in the musical networking world, I mean, artists come in so many different formats. There are plenty of guys who are great singer-songwriters, but if you ever had a conversation with them, it's like it's like pulling teeth. Like you can barely get a regular conversation out of that person. But it's only because they are a genuinely awkward person. If you are one of those people who feels like you're genuinely awkward, when you start talking to the guy that you're asking questions to, and when you start trying to tell them about your stuff, if you have a moment where you feel like you're about to freeze up and pause, actually do it. Freeze up and pause and just flat out say, like, I'm sorry. I never do this. I'm a little nervous. I'm kind of an awkward dude, but I need to get out there, and I am trying to, like, I care enough about the stuff that I care enough about the music that I'm trying to make to talk to a total stranger about it, which is way out of my comfort zone. And, they're either gonna say, all right, well, you're a weirdo, but come to the open mic next week, and they're hardly gonna pay any mind. Or they're gonna be like, no, it's okay, dude, it's okay. Like, I've met other awkward guys too. Just get up there and do your thing. Like, you're gonna get one of maybe 3 different kinds of responses, and you can't be afraid of that.
And like, I feel like it's this kind of thing where once you've done it enough times and you know what those,
It goes away.
you know what the possibilities are, and then you learn how to sort of
And
manipulate.
if it doesn't
that.
go away, it kind of becomes part of your style. And then it's almost an embraced thing. You can
Yeah,
embrace
it
your
makes
own
it-
awkwardness
it
as
makes
part
it
of
more fun.
Yeah, it's part of your character. It's part of, and it's great when an artist like has a character that they are known as, but it's not a complete facade. Like, it's not fake. Some people have like a very big open presence on stage, but behind closed doors they're not really like that at all. And that's cool too. But it's really awesome when you see somebody who is they seem like they're a little awkward on stage, but their songs are killer. And then you meet them off stage, you're like, oh, this is just an awkward dude who makes really awesome music, or an awkward girl who makes really awesome music. I've seen that a million times.
And what's cool about that is like other awkward people will resonate with that and relate
and
to
the
that.
Next thing you know, you have a whole new collaborative thing with those other awkward people who completely empathize with your mentality.
Because by not being yourself and by trying to like force it, you're gonna attract other people that are forcing it. It's not a good recipe. Better to be authentic and be like Ehud. Be the one guy out of your awkward, weird, like weeb friends. Be the one awkward dude that actually breaks out of it and like tries. And from there,
take your 18-inch forged short sword and deliver a mighty thrust with it.
Yes.
Into the gelatinous fat of the oppressive king.
Yeah, it's
that, and the oppressive king would be your own limitations in this regard. There we go. I didn't think I'd be able to bring that back around.
It's what God wants you to do after all. So we'll do a quick recap here because that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
That's about what we got there.
You got to cry out for help, and I think the crying out for help is just admitting that you can't do everything by yourself. However, if you have your team, you have a unified group, everybody's on your side. They're going to trust you when you do finally have to make that one decision where you have to go away from the group and you have to travel out and do what needs to be done. You always have your group back at home to support you, so you can take more risk that way.
And sometimes you have to build your team by getting out of your comfort zone a little bit to create your team and recruit your team.
And you are absolutely the master of that. Like I wish we had some people in here like chatting back and forth with us. Maybe at some point when we get more than one viewer here. Yeah, so I like that. This is why you're the perfect person for a show like this in general. Not only because you're a Bible expert, but because
he loves saying that.
You have well, you're more of an expert than me.
Not saying much.
But I've always like admired your ability to kind of throw caution to the wind and just talk to whoever you want. Because I was always the awkward kid, so I had to sort of force myself. I had to force myself to break out of that and go into.
And look at him now.
And get right. Yeah, I mean now we're doing a basically like a radio show,
podcast for strangers.
And I would have never had the courage to do that before. So and maybe another side point here is find other people that you look up to that are doing things that are better at things than you. People that are doing stuff that you want to be good at. Associate with them and ask them questions.
That's why I hammer you with production questions all the time.
There it is.
The same reason.
And so
you are the guru of that.
Yeah, and it's just like the more you know.
I wouldn't know any of the technical stuff that I do know now without having used you as counsel over the years.
Yeah. And honestly, we got so wrapped up in the in-person thing, which I think that's more applicable. We didn't even get to the social media side, but maybe let's save that for another show because that's a whole different animal than doing things in person.
Yes, it is.
It's easy to get somebody's attention in person. You walk up to them, you say hi, you shake their hand, you make eye contact, right? It's not so easy online when you have 500 billion other people trying to get that same person's attention.
Right.
So we'll do a future show on that and circle back to that. But that's the show for today. Overcoming hardship in your music career
by crying out for help and crying out with your collective community in order to achieve your future goals.
Absolutely. Be like Ehud. Have the courage. I use the thumbnail says tough times ahead. Okay. There's always tough times ahead. But as long as you're grounded and you have your team, you're going to be okay. And you have to build that. Nobody's going to do that for you. But if you like this video, if you like this show, definitely hit the like button. If you like, hit that subscribe button.
Is it over here?
The like button is probably right around there somewhere. And then the subscribe button is going to be over here somewhere. So hit that red subscribe button and hit the bell. Ring the bell. Hit it 2 times. Hit it 3 times. Actually, 2 times is probably bad. Well, wait, no, 2 times is good. 3 times would be bad. Let's do 4. Hit it 4 times. There we go. 4 times on the bell, just to double check it. But what else can we do? Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. All the other jam videos, as well as the more involved, longer-term videos, will be dropping every single week here on the Owen Adams Music channel. And we're going to try to maybe get a little more consistent with our show schedule here. But we're celebrating Connor's brand new job where he's making like $1 million a month or something.
Not true. Not true.
So you wanna definitely donate to me, but not him because he's rich.
Also
already.
not true. Just donate to the cause, you know?
Yes, you can always super chat on this channel. We do not do politics, and we do not like. I kind of want to say this for YouTube in case they're watching. We do not do. Okay, we might
always watching.
We might watch like controversial videos sometimes, but like, geez, our videos are not going to be controversial. This is not an alt-right channel. This is not a like Trump channel. Okay,
It's
like,
not an
give us-
Antifa channel. It's not. No.
It's none of that. It's not even a centrist channel. It's just apolitical. Okay, we want to just relate to people over music and positivity and having good business sense and common sense. And that's all this is about. So like, YouTube guys, if you're watching, like, give us a break here. Like, we're not trying to like hurt anybody's feelings. Like, we're not.
We haven't so far. I feel like we're doing a very good job at that.
No, I haven't got a single hate comment.
Well then, there we go.
So support this show on Patreon, patreon.com/oadamsmusic. Go to our website. You can buy all of our merchandise and music and watch videos and download files and audio files and add it to your library. oadamsmusic.com.
This is my lovely host, Owen Adams.
Yes, and this is my lovely host, Connor McTighe.
Thanks again, guys.
That's the OCast. Peace. We got to come up with a better outro than that.
We'll figure
Come
it
on.
out next time. Just cut it.
What?
Fade it out.
What did you say the first time? You said something really cool in the very first episode.
I don't know.
What
I
was
don't
it?
remember right now. You should cut it out. We should cut it while we're ahead, right?
Oh, I guess. Yeah, this kind of did a nosedive, didn't it?
No. It's doing more of a nosedive the longer you take it to fade out, you know?
Oh man, I'm just having fun. All right, y'all. I'm gonna put the lovely title screen back here. We'll see you guys next week.
East Coast.
Oh, that wasn't right. There we go. I just somehow moved it. I'm gonna just stop this before it gets any worse. My keyboard's not working. Sorry, y'all.